Section 2.2.29-T, homework. T is representing for using technology, and we're going to be using StatCrunch to answer this question. The accompanying table shows the tax in dollars on a pack of cigarettes in 30 randomly selected cities. We're going to complete parts A through G below. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our data, and then we're going to open this up into StatCrunch. So we're going to open this up into StatCrunch. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and then do the following. Okay, now our question is asking us the following. It says here to construct a frequency distribution using a first class having a lower class limit of 0 and a class width of 0.50. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to create a bin. So we're going to go data, and then we're going to scroll all the way down to where it says bin. Okay, and then we're going to select the column. Now let me go back and change. So instead of calling it variable 1, we're going to call it tax so it represents our question. So again, going to data, we're going to scroll all the way down to bin, and then we're going to select the column that says tax, and then we're going to now select used fixed width bins. We're going to start at the value of 0, and the bin width is going to be 0.50. Okay, and then we're going to go ahead and then include the left endpoint. So let's go ahead and select compute. So now what it's done is it's generated this new column called bin tax, which is what we want to work with now. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to stat, and then we're going to go to tables and then select frequency. Okay, now the column that we want to use now is the bin tax column, so we're going to go ahead and select that. We don't have to worry about the where or the group by, but the next thing that we need to use is we're going to use the frequency and relative frequency because this question is going to ask for both. Okay, and then we can say how we want to order this by. We're going to order this by a worksheet. Okay, and then what are the bin numerical values? Well, remember that the bin numerical values are starting at 0 and our width is 0.50. Okay, and then we're going to store it in the table so that we have all our information. So let's go ahead and compute. Okay, so now we have our data. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this data into our sheet. So here's the sheet. Okay, so what we want to do now is we're now going to then generate a frequency distribution. Okay, so let's take a look here. Now, again, the classes are represented by intervals of numbers, and the lower class limit is the smallest value within the class. The class width is a difference between consecutive lower class limits, and the same for all classes. Now, what's important here is the following, the next statement here. It's saying that the intervals for the different classes should not overlap, meaning that we have 0.5 here and then the lower class limits. So we're going to have to change these upper class limits because we do not want them to overlap with the lower class limits. So what does that mean? Well, we need to change that. So instead of it going from 0 to 0.5, this is now going to be 0.49. Okay? And 0.5 going to 1, well, it's going to go to 0.99. Okay, it's going to go from 1 to 1.49. Okay, it's going to go 1.5 to then 1.99. It's going to go from 2 to 2.49, because again, we don't want them to overlap. 2.5 to 2.99, and then 3 to 3.49, and then 3.5 to 3.99. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to first then use these lower class and upper class limits with our frequency and put that into our first result. Okay, so now let's go ahead and verify our result here for this question. Okay, so here I'm just going to open this up, make sure it's side by side so that we can see what our results was. So we go from 0 to 0.49 with a frequency of 4, 0.5 to 0.99 with a frequency of 9, and so on, 1 to 1.49 with a frequency of 5. And therefore, now we have created our frequency distribution. And let's go ahead to our last one here. So we have 4, and then this goes to 4.49. Okay, and then let's take a look at that result. We have 0. So from 4 to 4.49, we have a frequency of 0. Okay, so putting that last answer in there, we should see that we get the following. We're going to get that 4 to 4.49 with a frequency of 0. Okay, now what we're going to do is we want to be able to construct a relative frequency distribution using the first class having a lower class limit of 0 and a class width of 0.50. And we want to round to 2 decimal places as needed. So if we take a look here, we're going to use the same classes. We're going to round this to 2 decimal places. This is 0.13. This is 0.30. This is 0.17. 0.13, 0.10, 0.07, because again we're rounding that, 0.07, and then 0.03, and this is 0.00. So now using the same classes, the relative frequency is going to be the following. So I'm going to go ahead and put those in, and then we're going to check our results. So let's take a look at this result. So over here, okay, we wanted to make sure that it matches. So again, here is our relative frequency distribution. Again, we're going from 0 to 0.49, 0.13, 0.50 to 0.99, 0.30, 1 to 1.49, 0.17, all the way down to where we have 4 to 4.49, and then 0. Okay, so let's take a look at the next question. The next question wants us to then construct a frequency histogram using the graph below. So let's go ahead and open up StatCrunch again. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to create a frequency histogram using the first column because this is where all the data is. So we're going to go to graph and then we're going to select histogram. Okay, we're going to select the column that represents tax. Okay. And then what we want is a frequency histogram. So we have frequency. Remember that we started our bins at 0 and the width is 0.50. Okay, and then let's just choose the value above the bar. And then let's go ahead and then select compute. Okay, so here is our histogram. So we want to take a look at the histogram. Okay, and which one does this look like according to our result? Well, A doesn't look like this result, neither does C. Okay, it looks, B goes from here 4, but this one should go all the way up to 9, so it looks like it's the very last one here, which is D. So let's go ahead and check our answer, and there is our result. Now we're going to construct a relative frequency histogram. Now remember, it's going to look very similar to the frequency, but let's just go ahead and change our options. So we're going to go to options, select edit, and then again we're going to use the same column, but now we're going to change the type to relative frequency, and then everything else is going to stay the same. We're starting at 0, the width is 0.50, we have our values above the bar, and then now we're just going to go ahead and then select compute. So now we have our relative frequency histogram. So taking a look at that, if we take a look at A, it doesn't match A, it doesn't match C. Okay, over to our right, it looks like it is B. So we're going to go ahead and select B for our answer, and there is our result. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to now describe the shape of the distribution. Well, if you take a look at this, if we started up high, and then you can see how it's starting to taper down and create a right tail. Now, since it is a right tail, that means that we're going to say that this is skewed right. And so checking our answer, there is our result. Okay, now it's going to say repeat parts A through E using a class width of 1. So what we're going to do now is we're going to come back in here, okay, and now what we're going to do is we're going to use now a class width of 1. So we're going to now generate some new information. We're going to go now data, and we're going to go back to the same thing. We're going to select bin, okay, and then we're going to select the tax column because that's the column that we're using, and now we're going to use the fixed width bins. So we're still going to start at 0, okay, but now our bin width is going to be 1. And again, we're going to include the left endpoint. So let's select compute. Okay, now if you notice over here, it's created now a new bin tax column. So let's just say that this is the new one. So I'm going to call this the new and just add the word new so I can distinguish between the old column and the new column of this. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and follow the same procedure. I'm going to select stat. I'm going to go to tables and then select frequency. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go down here to where it says bin tax and then new. Okay, and again we want to generate a frequency and relative frequency distribution. Okay, we're going to go ahead and select worksheet like we did before. Okay, and then if we want, we can do the bin numerical values, select that and make sure that that represents 0 and our new width is 1. And then we're going to store it into the data table and then select compute. Okay, so now here is our information for the new one. Okay, so let me go over here and I'm going to copy this information here into our sheet. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, so this is our new information. Okay, and remember that the intervals for the different classes should not overlap. So remember that we need to change these upper limits so that it doesn't overlap with the lower limits. So what we want to do is we're going to go from 0, and then this is going to go from 0 to, let's say, 0.99. Okay, this is going to go from 1 to 1.99, and this is going to go from 2 to 2.99, and this is going to go from 3 to 3.99, and then we're going to have 4, and that's going to go to 4.99, and that means that we have a frequency of 0 and a relative frequency of 0. And now we're going to go ahead and put this information into our problem. Okay, so here we constructed our frequency distribution. 0 to 0.9 was 13. Let's just verify that on our page here. Okay, so scrolling down just a little bit, you can see that we have 0 to 0.99, 13, 1 to 1.99 is 9, and so on. So that matches that. Now what we want to do is construct our relative frequency distribution, and it says to round to 2 decimal places as needed. So if we round to 2 decimal places as needed, this is going to be 0.43, 0.30, 0.17, 0.10, and 0.00. So using the same classes, we're going to put in the relative frequency to answer the next question, which is the following here. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. So here is our results, putting our information in. Let's just go ahead and verify that so that it matches. So again, we have our relative frequency distribution. We go 0 to 0.99 to 0.43. And then you can see as we move forward here, 1 to 1.99. And you can see that we have the following. Let me move this down just a little bit here to 0.30 and then to 0.17. And therefore, that gives us our result for the relative frequency distribution. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to construct a frequency histogram using the information, choosing the correct histogram from below. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up StatCrunch. Okay, and what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and select graph and then go to histogram. Okay, and so again, we're going to use the first column using tax. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to scroll down and then we're going to construct a frequency histogram. Now we're starting at 0, but now the new width is going to be 1. Okay, and so then therefore we want to then click the values above the bar. Okay, and then we're going to select compute. Okay, so here we have our frequency histogram where it starts at 13, 9, 5, and 3. If we look at A, it doesn't match. It looks like it could be C. If we look at our other ones, it's not B and D, so we're going to go ahead and then select C. And then check our result. Okay, so there's our result. And now we're going to create a relative frequency distribution. So all we need to do now is go to Options, select Edit. And now, again, using the same column, everything's the same. The only thing that we need to change is type. We're going to change that to relative frequency. And then everything else is going to stay the same. And then just select compute. So again, it's going to be similar to the previous one. So it's not going to be A, it's not going to be C. It's going to be B in our question, and therefore there is our answer. Okay, now it says the distribution. Okay, what does it mean here? So we start high, and then you can see it starts tapering to the right. So just like in our previous one, we know it's going to be skewed right. Check our answer, and there is our result. Okay, now it says, does one frequency distribution provide a better summary of the data than the other, and then explain? So it says the shape is not clear in the distribution with more classes, so fewer classes should be used. That's not true. Neither distribution seems to show the shape of the data well. A different class size should be used. Not the case at all. The shape is not clear. It is clear. We're going to say that the answer is going to be D because both distributions have a similar shape, so either works